In today's video, we explore the tragic story of Kendra Hatcher, a young woman whose life ended in a devastating crime driven by lust, love, and deception. The day Brenda Delgado received an email from her former boyfriend was a warm one in the summer. For many years, they had been together and content. Ricky had even given her a promise ring. According to police, Ricky ended the relationship in February of that year because he was no longer happy. They remained friends. And in June, Ricky sent Brenda an email to inform her that he was seeing someone else, that someone was a beautiful young woman named Kendra Hatcher. The problem was that Brenda had not moved forward with her life the way Ricky had. So police say Brenda swore she would do whatever was necessary to win Ricky back. After receiving this devastating news, anyone or anything that stood in her way, she was prepared to kill. From September 2014 until September 2015, Kendra's life was nearly perfect. Pleasant Plains, Illinois was the place where she grew up and became a dentist. Then she moved to Dallas, Texas to start over. Most dentists would leap at the opportunity to begin their own practice after all those years of schooling. Kendra, however, made choices that reflected the kind of person she was. Rather than setting out on her own, she joined a group called Smile Zone, where she could provide children from disadvantaged homes with proper dental care. She was convinced she could make a real difference in her community. Kendra also spent much of her free time sharing the Bible with others, even when she wasn't volunteering to help people in need. She had even joined a program dedicated to building churches in foreign countries. That was already remarkable, but the group went further by offering free dental treatment to children in Ecuador. Kendra was undoubtedly a deeply compassionate person who constantly considered the well-being of others. In May of that year, however, her life improved even more when she met Ricky Paniagua on Tinder. By September, the two were deeply in love. Kendra lived in an upscale area of Dallas. Her residence was Gables Park 17, near the intersection of Cedar Springs and Acad. The place always made her feel secure because of numerous surveillance cameras and a 24-hour concierge service. Residents also had access to a carefully monitored parking garage. Ricky was also excelling professionally. He was completing his dermatology residency at the University of Texas. He and Kendra had already discussed marriage, despite having been together only 4 months. This might appear too soon, but they believed they were a perfect match because of their shared values and principles. They considered themselves nearly the ideal couple. One acquaintance described Kendra as beautiful, compassionate, and always eager to help anyone in need. She dedicated herself fully both to her profession and her relationship with Ricky. She had worked diligently to create the life she had. Yet, as often happens, another person's happiness and success stirred resentment. Envy is never easy to endure. Tragically, this jealousy led to a horrific crime that would forever change Ricky's life and cost Kendra her own. On September 2nd, after finishing her shift at Smile Zone, Kendra returned home to Gables Park 17. It was a Friday, and she looked forward to the weekend since she and Ricky planned to travel to Mexico for Labor Day, a U.S. holiday. Upon returning, she eagerly anticipated discussing plans for her and Ricky to move to San Francisco. She had no idea what awaited her at her building. At precisely 7:42 p.m., she arrived home, drove her vehicle into the secure garage, and parked in her usual space. But only minutes later, 2 individuals in the garage heard a woman screaming, followed by the chilling sound of gunfire. Another resident, Hashim Saad, heard the same sound and immediately sensed something was wrong. Though he did not know exactly what had occurred or who was involved, he dialed 911 and reported what he had heard. But before he did, witnesses observed a Jeep Cherokee speeding out of the garage. They could not determine whether it was connected to the sounds they heard or if someone was merely in a rush. Police arrived quickly, but nothing they could do could undo what they discovered. By the time officers reached the scene, Kendra was already dead. Up to that point, there had been no indication anyone bore malice toward her. After all, she was nearly the kindest person one could hope to meet. While examining the crime scene, police quickly noticed her bag was missing. Her purse was neither in her car nor anywhere in the garage. This led investigators to suspect she had been the victim of a robbery gone wrong, resulting in her being killed by the assailant. Supporting this theory, a gun magazine and scattered ammunition were found near her body. However, as detectives examined the scene more closely, they uncovered disturbing evidence. With each new finding, it became increasingly clear. They concluded the killing had been premeditated. The presence of gunshot residue on Kendra's hands suggested her hands were placed behind her head when the weapon was fired, indicating the scene was staged to resemble a robbery. The bullet's trajectory showed the shooter had been standing behind her while she was on her knees, likely forced into position. Such details were not typical of a robbery. Investigators still did not know who could have inflicted such cruelty on this innocent woman. It was profoundly unfair. But for the perpetrator, everything was unfolding as intended. Once the crime scene was processed, officers had to deliver the devastating news to Kendra's boyfriend, Ricky. His grief was immediate and overwhelming. Later that night, Ricky sent a text to Brenda Delgado. His former girlfriend and longtime friend, Brenda expressed shock at hearing of Kendra's death. She assured Ricky she would be available for him at any time, day or night. As the inquiry into the strange case advanced, police reviewed security footage from Kendra's building, gathering crucial details about the Jeep Cherokee spotted leaving moments after the shooting. The video showed the vehicle arriving at 7:15 p.m., 28 minutes before Kendra entered the garage. A man was seen walking toward the area where Kendra's car would later park, then returning to the Jeep shortly after. That man was certainly involved, but police did not recognize him or the vehicle. It was soon discovered the man was not acting alone. A woman was recorded driving the Jeep only seconds after the man climbed back inside. This made it evident the crime had been carefully coordinated. Unfortunately, the footage was not clear enough to reveal the suspects' identities or capture the license plate. As a result, investigators released still images to the public, requesting assistance in identifying the pair or the Jeep. Typically, such public appeals yield little response, either because the suspects cannot be recognized or because potential witnesses fear retaliation. In Kendra's case, however, the outcome was different. Once the stills were released, Jose Luis Ortiz surprised everyone by admitting the Jeep in the footage belonged to him. He insisted he was not present during the crime and had no knowledge his vehicle would become central to a murder investigation. Ordinarily, police might doubt such claims, but Ortiz provided additional information that helped redirect the case. What he revealed was both troubling and infuriating. To investigators' surprise, the first name Ortiz mentioned was Brenda Delgado, Ricky's ex-girlfriend. Brenda's family described her as a kind, caring individual who adhered to Christian values and belonged to a loving household. Ortiz explained that Brenda and 26-year-old Crystal Cortez had asked him on the morning of September 2nd to repair Cortez's car, which had engine trouble. They also requested to borrow his Jeep for the day. He agreed without hesitation, believing the two women needed it for work. He assumed he was simply doing them a favor. They had arranged to meet later that day at Ortiz's residence. Plan abruptly changed. Brenda called and asked to meet at a nearby Chili's restaurant instead. Ortiz agreed, thinking nothing unusual of the request. But when he arrived, neither the vehicle nor Crystal were there. Eventually, the two women returned the Jeep that evening. But by then Ortiz knew Kendra had been murdered and that his car had been used in the crime. Before contacting police, he confronted Brenda about the images released to the public. She assured him the vehicle on camera was not his but merely resembled it. Later, however, she altered her story, claiming Crystal had driven the Jeep to Kendra's building to collect illegal goods for a friend. This explanation disturbed Ortiz. He began to suspect something had gone terribly wrong and feared Kendra had either been caught up in the incident or killed while witnessing it. Once authorities traced the Jeep back to him, Ortiz realized he had to come forward to avoid suspicion falling on him. He also revealed Brenda urged him to stay silent after confessing the Jeep had been used, warning he could lose his U.S. citizenship if implicated. She even suggested he repaint the vehicle to avoid association with the crime, offering to cover the cost. Her deception only deepened Ortiz's suspicions. Determined to clear his name, he told police everything. Investigators immediately sought Brenda. When questioned, she claimed she had never heard of Kendra and knew nothing about her. She also provided what she said was an alibi, producing receipts from Chili's and insisting Ortiz could confirm they had dinner together at the time of the murder. Brenda further admitted being with Crystal when they borrowed the Jeep from Ortiz, saying she let Crystal use it for the remainder of the day. This, she said, would help identify the true culprit. Investigators then interviewed Crystal to hear her account. She initially presented an elaborate story. Crystal admitted she was the driver in the surveillance footage, but insisted she had acted under duress with her young son in the car after being threatened by an armed robber who forced her to drive to Kendra's building. Investigators quickly recognized this as a fabrication since surveillance showed no child in the Jeep. When confronted directly, Crystal shifted her story once again, a poor tactic with seasoned detectives. She then admitted she had agreed to drive the man to the garage so he could commit a robbery, claiming Brenda had asked her to assist. She maintained she had no knowledge a murder would occur. At this point, Crystal acknowledged her involvement but refused to take the blame alone. She accused Brenda of orchestrating the plan, asserting Brenda had directed her participation because she was enraged that Ricky was seeing someone new. The case was beginning to align. Brenda could not accept Ricky's relationship with Kendra once she discovered it. Police recognized they were uncovering the real motive, but this was only the beginning. Despite still caring deeply for Ricky, Brenda never expressed it openly. Instead, she engaged in increasingly disturbing behavior to monitor him. Ricky dated other women after breaking up with Brenda, but none of those relationships lasted until he met Kendra. Since Ricky and Brenda stayed in contact after their breakup, Ricky believed it proper to inform her by email when he began seeing someone seriously. Brenda appeared supportive, even suggesting they remain friends. Ricky likely appreciated her seemingly mature response, unaware that Brenda was devastated by the news. It profoundly affected her, and soon she and Crystal began plotting to remove Kendra. Brenda withheld many details from Crystal, but Crystal soon realized the gravity of their actions and chose to cooperate with prosecutors in hopes of a reduced sentence. She revealed that only 2 weeks after meeting, Brenda confided she wanted Kendra gone from Ricky's life, even if it meant murder. Ordinarily, such a revelation would end a friendship, but Crystal agreed surprisingly quickly. Early signs showed Brenda's obsession with Ricky and Kendra's relationship was interfering with her life. She even missed work shifts while preoccupied with following Ricky. Her behavior escalated further when she hacked into his email and discovered plans for both a vacation and a move to begin a new life together. Her deteriorating mental state was evident. She told Crystal she believed Kendra was an imposter who had replaced her. As time passed, Brenda's resentment grew. Ultimately, she concluded eliminating Kendra was the only way to regain Ricky. She first approached her cousin, Moses Martinez, asking him to attack Kendra with a baseball bat. He declined. She then asked her friend, Jennifer Escobar, proposing the same. Brenda convinced herself the assault would put Kendra in a coma, giving her time to win Ricky back. Jennifer refused as well. By this time, Brenda had already hacked Ricky's email and spent hours monitoring his messages and movements. Jennifer recognized Brenda's obsession and worried, especially since Brenda still had copies of Ricky's house keys and access to his bank accounts without his knowledge. When Jennifer refused again, Brenda offered an alternative, supplying drugs and $2,000 to kill Kendra. Jennifer still rejected the plan. Around this time, Brenda and Crystal's partnership deepened. Crystal admired Brenda for her stable job, independence, and financial security. Crystal herself struggled to provide for her child as a single mother. Evidence later showed Brenda had given Crystal $500, documented by an ATM slip found among her belongings. Together, they continued plotting. Still, they needed someone willing to commit violence. They began cruising through Crystal's neighborhood, known for its rough reputation, searching for someone to take the job. Astonishingly, they approached multiple people with the request, but all declined. In fact, these two women drove around soliciting strangers to kill is shocking. Eventually, however, they met 31-year-old Christopher Love. He appeared willing and even discussed possible methods of killing Kendra. They ultimately decided on a firearm, reasoning it would ensure speed and efficiency. Christopher would be compensated with cash and drugs, and Brenda promised him additional gang connections. He agreed. While monitoring Ricky's emails, Brenda learned he and Kendra planned a trip to Mexico that weekend, followed by a move. She insisted the murder happened immediately. Brenda and Crystal followed Kendra to learn her routine. Christopher, meanwhile, waited for instructions across the street from Smile Zone, sitting at a Salvation Army thrift store. They even used binoculars to observe Kendra at work. That afternoon, they tailed her home, discovering they could access the parking garage by tailgating a resident through the gate. With Kendra's habits mapped, they felt certain of success. After days of surveillance, the trio rehearsed their roles on September 1st. The next morning, after dropping Brenda at the Carrollton Library, Jose loaned the Jeep to Crystal and Brenda. They picked up Christopher. Later, Christopher and Crystal went to Smile Zone. At one point, Crystal left to collect her son and nephew from school, delivering them to her grandmother before returning to resume the plan. They watched Kendra leave work, but heavy traffic delayed them, causing them to arrive at her residence just before her. They entered the garage by following another car. Once inside, Christopher exited the Jeep and executed the plan while Crystal remained hidden. Afterward, they fled to Christopher's residence, where he was dropped off. Crystal then returned the Jeep to Jose. She later revealed the entire scheme to police as part of her deal. For her cooperation, Crystal received 35 years instead of life. Realistically, she may serve less before parole. Christopher, however, was soon caught when the murder weapon was found in his vehicle. He confessed his involvement and acknowledged Brenda as the mastermind. By then, his confession was unnecessary. Investigators already knew the details from Crystal. Christopher was sentenced to death as the shooter. Brenda was the final piece. She denied responsibility, claiming she could not accept Ricky's happiness with someone else. Realizing the severity of her situation, Brenda fled rather than face consequences. She remained a fugitive for 7 months, eventually landing on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. A $100,000 reward was offered for her capture. Ultimately, she was located in Mexico and arrested in April of the following year. She was extradited back to the United States under the condition she would not face execution. She pled not guilty, presenting an alternate version of events. Nevertheless, jurors concluded Brenda orchestrated Kendra's murder. She was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole. This devastating crime should never have occurred. Because of one person's jealousy, Kendra's family's lives are forever changed. The loss has also deeply impacted her colleague. Her close friend, Tammy Patino, who attended school with Kendra and remained close afterward, said it is difficult now to feel carefree or joyful. She no longer feels as outgoing as she once was, likely due to grief and fear. She added the crime also harmed her husband and many others, including patients who adored Kendra. Her patients continue struggling to accept that 3 strangers, people who never even spoke to her, took the life of someone so kind and radiant. No one can predict what happens when passion and jealousy consume a mind. Most eventually accept they must move on. Brenda Delgado could not. She will pay with her freedom for the rest of her life. Yet even that cannot compensate for the loss of Kendra Hatcher, a truly remarkable young woman.